I mean, right now, like, one thing I've been doing recently for student engagement and getting the kids to want to come to class is like the first like 15 minutes. I have like three of my diaries. I have like eight diaries from high school when I was their age. So I read out of them and I censor it. I tell them I don't censor it, but I definitely censor some parts of it. But then they get to see, and hear all the drama. And like right now, like this one girl is like, are we gonna know what happens with Steve? What's going on with Steve? And like just funny things. And that gets them that they're like, they make sure that they log in, that they're there at the beginning and log in because they want to hear the drama, which is one of the most hilarious things I have seen in my trying to get kids to get to class.
You are listening to the Music Ed Mentor Podcast, where we teach music educators how to build, manage, and grow thriving school music programs and have long and happy careers, whether you're living in a pandemic or afterward. Today, we're going to be talking about the elephant in the virtual classroom, student engagement. We've heard about students quitting music classes for a variety of reasons, but the truth is, if they are still loving music, if they are still connecting with the subject and connecting with you as a teacher, then they will either not quit, or if they do, they will come back. Quick sidebar. I'm personally of the opinion that music classes should be compulsory for all students in every grade, and we should have enough music course options that there is something for everyone to enjoy. Okay, end sidebar. The question is, how do we keep students engaged when we feel so limited, when we feel like we can't keep their attention? How do we even know if they are watching when we can't force them to keep their cameras on? How do we choose quality assignments and activities that are still teaching them musical skills, but also keeping them loving the class and excited to show up? To help us answer these questions, I've brought on one of my favorite people in the world, a two-time Grammy Music Educator of the Year finalist, and one of the most engaging teachers I know, Courtney Powers. As you'll hear in our chat today, Court isn't having issues keeping students wanting to come to online music class. In fact, she has a waiting list. We're going to delve into what keeps her students engaged, some of the activities that they do to advance their musical skills, and how she's thinking about her ensembles right now. But first, a big thanks to Smart Music for their work creating engaging activities for students that help with assignments and assessments. Smart Music is constantly putting out new music into their portfolio that your students will connect with and love. My own kids have been using Smart Music as they've been remote learning, and I've heard how it challenges them to refine their personal musical skills. If you want to explore how Smart Music can help you teach and your students to learn, visit smartmusic.com. Now, let's recapture your students with Courtney Powers. All right, why don't you introduce yourself for our audience?
Okay, my name is Courtney Powers. I teach at South Philadelphia High School in the School District of Philadelphia. It is a community school where it's not a special admit. It's just community kids that get to come to the school. I am a Grammy 2020 semifinalist and 2021 quarterfinalist. I've gotten a Vans grant, Give a Note grant, Save the Music, grant facilitator for South Philly, and just overall, I love music. That's me.
And you're super, super good at it, by the way.
I don't know. Yes, that's very flattering.
You are. And you know what? The first time we met, it was at the National Association for Music Education conference in 2017.
Yes.
And you were like super rad, like just your energy and everything was just so cool. And I was like, oh my God, let's be best friends forever.
Yeah,
And
I remember that very vividly. I even remember what I was wearing. Um, and then I remember like you had a mouthpiece because I was like, oh my gosh, like we got to go represent. Brass girls got to represent. And I got your mouthpiece or something, and I got to go play somebody else's trumpet. You know, back in the days where you could like put mouthpiece sanitizer and feel safe.
where
Um,
you could
so
be around other people. Yeah.
yeah, and got up there, and I remember doing a solo, and you were like, yes, like it was, I vividly remember that. And then all of our times after that, where we've connected at all the different conferences, NAM was awesome.
Oh, so good. I'm so glad that you were there and
Oh my
we got
God.
to go around and like judge people.
Yeah, that was so much fun. It was so much fun because like I liked to have a goal to really like a problem to solve. Like I like to be there and I like to learn, but I also like to, talk to, these other companies, these education companies, or some companies that's not even education, and they haven't even seen how their product could be applicable to us educators. So it was very, very interesting, but it's all weird that like everybody's still trying to do their conferences, even though like we can't be in person. And it's kind of like I wonder now if it's going to be like some norm that it'll be like a virtual conference, or like you could be a presenter in a room with people. I just wonder how this will play into effect, uh, how we go to conferences and perceive conferences. I don't know. Thinking about that.
Yeah, I think about that all the time, of course. You know,
Yeah.
when I first started IMES, it was, hey, this is a great idea. We're going to be able to pull presenters from all over the world. We're going to be able to get attendees from anywhere, people who can't go to conferences, and it had that sort of novel flavor to it. And I still think it's brilliant, but I think it's going to shift pretty severely. But I'm going to keep those thoughts to myself.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
I see so much of it, and hosting so many conferences like I am. So what I want to know is, what is your teaching situation like right now?
Oh, what a great question. Well, we're parent teacher conferences right now. How did we get here? I'm not sure. We are 100% virtual. We have not been in school. I've delivered instruments. I think I counted like 58, almost 60 instruments to kids, my students around Philly, so they can have an instrument at home. And we are completely virtual. And I think probably I would say 20% turn on their cameras. And I'm at the higher end of that, which is a lot. So some classes are fast paced. I mean, like I have a class that's 90 minutes. Well, they're 90-minute blocks every other day. And it's like we're supposed to do synchronous and asynchronous, synchronous then asynchronous, but you got to be on for asynchronous. And it's all these rules. And it's like, I'm a type of person that if it's 90 minutes, like I'll just end up keep teaching or just keep like, reiterating, the same stuff that we're learning in different ways. But like, that tires me out. Like that's tiresome.
It's exhausting. Being on camera in general is exhausting.
Yes, and just being on and like trying to and having the patience through their technical difficulties, through mine and through mine too. I mean, like, because I've there was one time I was waiting in a Google Meet, and I'm like, where is my class? This is strange. It's like 5 minutes like into what class should be starting. I'm like, man, like this is not normal. I was in the whole wrong Google Meet the whole time. And somehow they they could log into the Meet. This was like pre them putting the one screening on there or whatever it is now. And they're just like sitting there. They're like, Miss, where were you? And I was like, I was just in the other Google Meet. I was like, thank you. Thank you for just staying around. I mean, because they just don't know what to do. I mean, it's just like, when there's a sub and the sub didn't show up to the room and the kids just sit there and it's like, well, what do we do? Do we leave? Do we stay? Like, there's no protocol. So it's interesting how those funny, silly things can still happen virtually. And it's difficult to teach an instrument virtually. But there can be a lot of things that you can accomplish with, music citizenship wise, or, just overall general music knowledge. I think that, people that if you're able to tap into, using Soundtrap or BandLab or whatever, and just get them exposed to some different things, especially if you are coming from like the norm, okay, we have band every day, like we're rehearsing, this is what we do. This really would give you a very experimental part of teaching, which I kind of wish I had that. I mean, I kind of wish I had that, I guess. I have some students, my students' abilities range wildly in the same classroom. We have a lot of students that don't speak any English. And so like I'm translating the stuff for them in Google Translate, and it's, not correct. And it just becomes sometimes daunting. Like that's at the point I feel like I am right now. Like it's just daunting. We shouldn't have so much screen time, or like the kids are stressed. I feel that, there's a lot of educators that are putting a lot of pressure on kids to perform because, quote, they're at home bored. Like, I don't think that that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
That's a misconception. Like what I had a child write me this, like this is an example of, my students' heartache, and just, sometimes I feel powerless sometimes because I want to help them, but like how I'm just the music teacher,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm just the science teacher. But we can have a very, very big impact. So this particular kid of mine, I don't even have her this year in classes. Okay, I just don't even have her, but she was one of my students last year. Good kid, still plays guitar. Great. She writes me at 1:00 in the morning. This is like a couple days ago. Hello, teacher. I think that these 2 weeks to come, you may not see me in any of my classes since my job at the pizzeria, the other cashier will go on vacation for 2 weeks and they will make me take her position. But it's something very stressful and I can hardly concentrate on my studies because I work, and I even can't get into some classes because I can't wake up to attend. My parents make me work for only $5 an hour, and the other cashier earns $9. I earn very little, but I work way too much just for fulfilling the work at the pizzeria. And then she gives me the address. My grades were very bad. They called my parents to tell them that I have not entered several classes. They will punish me without my phone and without internet, without anything. And I only earn $5. I'm exploding. I don't know what to do or how to accommodate me. Please send this message so it reaches my other teachers.
Wow.
And like I responded back, I said, I got you, breathe, and let's work to find a solution. There's no exploding yet. You are very, very smart. And as much as this message was hard to write, you did it. And that was the hard part. Now let's work on the solution. Because a lot of our students, they have to take care of their family. And I understand that. And like, there's like a Midwest value maybe in that like, yeah, sometimes you gotta work for your family, and family comes first sometimes. It's like this mentality. And some of our educators are missing that point. Like their family is in crisis, and school's probably the last priority, because guess what? They could escape going to school, escape everything else, and be like, cool, I'm at school. My home can't bother me. And now it's become intertwined, and we're gonna lose some really great educators, I feel, and some really great students in this time.
Are we pressuring students too much to fulfill our musical expectations?
Well, I think we have expectations. But it's almost like you really have to take into account every kid and every little situation, because at school, like you could kind of like maybe divide your class into like 5 little like subgroups of like, okay, I know how this technique works. These kids, these kids, these kids, these kids, and you're ready to go. But then here on the virtual setting, it's everybody has a different need, and I can't see to help them, and it sometimes just gets frustrating. And I think it just depends on what your expectation is. I think these long projects, I don't think they're the way to go. I also don't think that, like if you're doing classwork, I think classwork is where it's at. Class discussions, class activities, and then asynchronous. Be like, okay, cool, go listen to this album, or hey, and you don't have to write about it. Like there's no reason to have to write about everything you do. I know that writing is a very, very big part of our pedagogy here in our education system, but there's something to be said of just like letting the kids just listen to music. Or like I do Fun Fridays where they give me their music, and sometimes I'm just like, oh my gosh, we're going to listen to 1.5 minutes of this song, because I always give every song 1.5 minutes.
Uh-huh.
And if I can't stand it, or it's just like a mess, then I will change it. And it's nice that they know that I'll play those things, but they also like will get that asynchronous time to listen to an album, and then they can come back to class and be like, all right guys, like what do we think about the album? And they could sit there and play a video game while they listen to it. And I'm not, and like these are things, I'm not looking for active listening, I'm looking for passive listening. I'm looking for, all right, so you listened to it, did you enjoy it? Were there parts that like stuck out? Like I'm not dissecting, just enjoyment. And I think that I think some people are missing that right now.
Is it because we're trying to be too academic? I mean, how are you doing grading and assessments?
So I actually do this, like the self-assessment thing. So we have to have 2 grades in our grade book per week, a varied repertoire grade. So I always have like a classroom grade of like, if we're doing an activity that, you're putting something in the chat or whatever, like something minor. And then usually I'll do like a quizzes with all the Z's at the end. Like a 10 thing quiz, 10 number quiz on, it could be music instruments, anything that we had went over for the week. And they take that during class. Like there's no reason we can't spend 20 minutes, dedicated to that. So they don't have that homework. And then at the end of the semester, I just did this, where it was 100-point test grade that they had to give me their self-reflection. So, and since this is their first time doing it with me, I kind of like this semester, it's a little bit condensed. So like I have them, put their Instagram so I can keep track of them, put in their information and stuff like that. Then I ask them, what do you deserve? What grade do you think you deserve? And then they have to, pick one. And then why do you deserve that grade? And I give them examples. I'm like, miss, I do all the homework. Miss, I should do my homework and I don't. Or, just like silly little answers. And I got a array of different things there. And then the 2 questions at the bottom were, and I said, what do you like about Miss Powers? What would you change about Miss Powers? Now that they could have taken that, and I left it up to be vulnerable. And I told him that. I said, like, I had it to where I can't see who wrote what. So I'm like, I'm like putting like some major trust into, oh my gosh, what do these kids actually think? Because kids can be mean. But there was no mean comments. Kids mostly gave themselves B's on average. They said that they, wish they felt that they could participate more, but, they don't know how, because it's not like we can sing or they can play an instrument for me. It's like, it's just on a screen. And then some of the ones were like, Miss, I just wish you spoke Spanish. Those are things I'm working on. I'm definitely doing the Duolingo and doing things to further myself, to help myself and to help my students. But I think that even if like we just have that, okay, go listen to this album during asynchronous time, you can still assess that by if they come back and they, they have to answer like one question in the chat or something, not an assignment that they have to go in and write it, but where it's an organic conversation where it's like, okay, all right, let's talk about the album for 10 minutes. And, people, the students are able to put in the side of the chat, or the ones that feel comfortable, they can be chatting. But that's also assessment. There's lots of different assessments than, is that the right notes? Is this the right rhythm? All of those very solid, more math thing. There is this other part of music that is super creative. And I think it's we can tap into that right now.
Absolutely. And I wonder if so many teachers are putting a lot of pressure on themselves to create these big projects and big assessments and, line by line grading their tone quality and pitch accuracy and, all of that. It can be overwhelming when you've got hundreds of students that you really just want to give them time and attention. But is now the time to be doing that sub-level of assessment?
Yeah, I mean, I personally I don't think that it really has an intrinsic value for us right now, because we can, kids are smart. You can manipulate those recordings. You can, like, if you're going to practice, you're going to practice. Why not use this time to practice, fun things, or songs that they want to know off the radio, or how to transcribe by ear, or, there's an array of different things that you can do besides just what you're talking about, the standard literature, which I love. But, for my students, when we look at standard literature, it's really tough. And they're better adept with the kind of abstract thinking, where I was a student of the model of, okay, I know my parameters. I know, here's the piece. This is what we're playing. I can sight read it through. I don't want to think outside of my box. So
horn players.
Yes, I know.
Like we're horn players.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Horn. Yes, I mean, it's because, like, okay, I know my job at the French horn job. Here it is. Da da da. But then when band directors and band students have been thrown into this, oh my God, what are we doing at home? What do you mean I have to be at home and play music? And then, like, my fear is we are creating students that are so wound up for perfection, because this online thing, like the pitch accuracy and all that stuff, it's great. It's great to know how to do that. But, like, when you're in an ensemble, sometimes if you're an orchestra and that oboe is just 10 cents sharp, well, everybody better adjust. There's nothing you can do. But if you're one of those people that's like, what do you mean? What do I do? Do I pull out? Do I push in? Like, and it becomes like, I see a lot of students, like high schoolers, just very wound up, very, like, just everything has to be perfect. And oh my God, like, I need all the directions. And I'm like, because again, my class is like, I'm using this, like, I guess, free-ish model of like, okay, well, let's think about it this way. And I was like, I'm not giving any answers. They're like, well, what do you want us to do? And I was like, well, what do you want to listen to? And they're like, well, what do you want us to listen to? And I was like, no, that's not how this game works. And it's like having students make decisions now is a very, very interesting process, because especially decisions where there's no finite solution. And so, like, going back to, the finite of our instruments and like their pitch and all of that stuff. I mean, I think it's important, but if you do that once a month, great. The rest of the time, like, explore your instrument, like, find out cool facts about it, find players that you loved as a high schooler, and have your students learn more about you as a person, which makes them want to feel more, I guess, feel more vulnerable, or feel more accessible to be vulnerable, because, students not all, a vast majority have their social media accounts, and they know how to, manipulate all of that. And that's just what they've grown up in. And that's, no fault to them. But to show our authentic self, which is what I was telling you earlier about the reading the diary entries, knowing that I'm a person, that they're a person, that's kind of what we need right now. We need to, like, especially during the pandemic time, like, everybody's stressed, and we're taking it in completely different ways, because it's what do we don't know. We are just living day to day, and that's not good for our psyche. As people, we don't like flight mode all the time. And some teachers are, like you said, like, doing these grand projects, and they're beautiful. I mean, I love them for doing it and taking that time. But my goodness, I just don't have time. I guess I just don't have the time to do those grandiose projects, because I'm more wanting to get to know the kids and making sure they're all right, and where can music help them in this time. Music should not be a burden. My class should not be a burden. They should want to come into my class and hopefully learn something, which they say they do every day.
So have you had students dropping out of music?
No, not at all. I got too many kids.
How are you keeping them in? How are you keeping them engaged?
I mean, try to, like, I listen to what they have to say, and sometimes we may, like, my morning class, it starts at 8:24. I'm like, all right, I'm going to take attendance at 8:40, and then we'll just kind of chat, because we've got 90 minutes. I do bite-sized activities. So I think of, like, my lessons kind of like a TikTok. So, like, 5-minute chunks, and in between, like, oh, I'll play a music video, or, oh, like, okay, here's a 10-minute break, get up and stretch, like, whatever. And I do, like, if I'm doing, we were doing rhythms last week. So if I'm really doing the rhythms, and we're doing a whole bunch of rhythms, I'm going to focus on, like, 5 minutes of that. Boom. We'll do a rhythm activity with clapping, like, we were clapping along to Super Mario Brothers last week. So we were doing, like, eighth notes and quarter notes with that. And then boom, I'm coming back to the core, getting some of this done. And then they're like, class is over. And I'm like, yeah, class is over. Because, I just kind of have, it's about the pacing, and my pacing sucked for like a month. It was not good. And I think getting the pacing down and seeing where they need a break, they're tired, like, just kind of like how we do as teachers, we read the room. We kind of got to gauge with the chat, and, what time of the day is it? And all of those things, to kind of help mold what we're going to do.
Yeah, totally. Just the fact that we need breaks, I think that we forget.
Yes.
And It's okay to turn your camera off.
Yeah. Oh, for sure, for sure. And like there'll be times I'm like, this is what I've been doing. When I feel they're not paying attention to me, when I feel that I've lost them or I've like, went off on, oh my God, let me tell you about Beethoven. And they're like, Miss, you've been talking for 10 minutes. Because sometimes I get excited. But so if I say in the chat, I'm like, all right, guys, I get my guitar. I'm like, give me words, put words in the chat. And they're like, what? I'm like, put any words you want in the chat. I'm going to make up a song right now. And they're like, what? Whatever. And then they start throwing random words in there. And I will make up a song. Will it be a fantastic song? Absolutely not. Will it make sense? No way. But it gets them laughing and back engaged in the chat. Like, so if I can, it's kind of like, oh, my lesson's kind of going downhill. Let me save it with I'm going to make a song up, which they enjoy. So, it's trial and error, and, own it when it doesn't work right, because it's okay.
Yeah, and it's okay to do the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. I record if I'm doing like a particular lesson. I will record like my first time teaching it, somewhere in the middle, and my last time teaching it. Because I'll teach it about 6 times, and I'll teach it different ways those times, but in the classes, there'll be a certain section, 30 minutes or so that I want, that is the nitty gritty of the lesson. So I can go back and, I mean, I've got a little catalog now of like random recordings from my Google Meet. Some of them, like, I'm like, oh my gosh, why did I talk so long at the beginning? That's where I noticed. I was like, if I'm bored, they got to be bored.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so it's like having that self-reflection and not like, I think we have a misconception, and I've had students say this to me, that they think that everyone thinks that they're good at technology, and they're not. They're good at technology in like, okay, cool, I know how to use the phone. Well, so does my mom, so does a lot of people know how to use the phone. But when it comes to computer applications, they haven't had a computer class. When was the last computer class? If they have a computer class, it's very rare that they're learning how to save files properly. I mean, because a lot of the kids, people will do it for them. They'll just be like, okay, teachers will be like, oh my God, I cannot teach this. I got to get through this and this and this. Here, just let me do it for you. And then that let me do it for you attitude has got us into like high schoolers, like, what does Google Classroom mean? And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, all right, guys. And you can't like, and I just have to laugh at them. And I like, there's some, if I'm in that like particular class where I'm just like, y'all are ridiculous. I'm going to just sit here and wait for someone to be able to figure out how to open this PDF. Like, and I'll just wait. Like, in some of those things, they're just like, Miss, just tell us. And I'm like, I don't want to have to give you the answer all the time. So I think that is something that, like I mentioned before, of just like exploring the different parts of what it is to be a kid, exploring the different parts of what it is to know music class. It's not just like we don't have to have it the same. Like, no one says that we do. It's just like it's very hard to go quote rogue or try something different because it's uncomfortable and there's no map for it. But did Liszt have a map for his playing? Absolutely not. He was a monster. Like, it takes something changing the narrative, changing the mold. And it's hard. I mean, this is something that's been going on in culture for so long, especially in music. We like our one particular set of music, and by gosh, we are not going to change it. Think of like our classical music period going into the romantic. There were diehard classical purists in the romantic era that are like, no, I will not listen to this romantic music. But we have the same sort of thing today. It's just we are able to be connected with so many other like-minded people that are into whatever subgenre. Like the kids have so many connections to their artist that we never had growing.
True.
Like they have like this. I got them like I was like super excited about the magazines. I'd get like a double XL. What was the other one? Oh God, like Teen Vogue. You like, and there was one. It was like the
Teen
alternative magazine.
Beat? No.
Teen Beat, yeah, some Tiger Beat. I don't know.
Yeah.
The mess, but like those came out once a month, and then you were like, oh my gosh, and it was so cool if you could get one. You read it all front to back. I mean, that was like our media, and they just get it. They get it way more than we do, which is interesting. But also, if this is the time as a teacher to really kind of like reflect on what their usage is and why are they not capable or they don't like to take risk. Why is it? Because of the comfortability of being in the phone, or is it something else that is changing? Because like with changing the narrative and changing the mindset of just education in general, it takes reflection of what do students want. Like there's a lot of times where we are not, or we are taking into account what the best and brightest students at the school think because they're on all the committees and all that stuff. Well, what about the kids that don't want to come to school? What would make them want to come to school? Or some, run of the mill, just, average C student. What would make them want to be a better student? What would incentivize them? We have to really sit back and ask ourselves. And as music teachers, we have a great point that we can take pretty much any kid that is willing to come to the band room. We're like, we got something for you. Who knows if they're going to be successful, but they're going to be part of that community. And within band, you know how the band structure is. There's different groups of band and, different groups of people, but you're all band. You're all a community. And I think online, it's very hard to create that community unless you're all actively engaged in one thing. Like when we play music, we're all actively engaged in this one thing. So like when we have those organic discussions about an album or, hey, I want you to listen to my favorite things, Miles Davis, and give them, 15 minutes. Okay, you got 15 minutes of jazz you can listen to. And then we come back and we talk about it and we talk about different melodies or, different things like that and have a intellectual conversation about it. Because just because they might not have the right words, you can get them to get on the right path to really have a great organic discussion. And they have really brilliant thoughts that, it's from the mouth of babes. Sometimes.
But are you worried? Are you worried about what your ensembles are going to sound like next year? Or do you think that this is a beneficial permanent shift away from the ensemble model?
Oh, I mean, I love my ensembles. Don't get me wrong. Oh yeah, I've thought about that often. It's going to be a year of a hot mess, and that's okay. What do we expect? We can't expect perfection. These kids are going to have roughly a year outside of their cohort. You've had a year basically without them, with this, without weird. Even if you are in person, it's weird regardless. It's not, quote, normal what they would be used to. But I don't think we can't worry about that right now because we have to worry about tomorrow. We cannot, we can think about, all right, well, maybe here's some different ways that I can approach knowing that I'm going to get frustrated, that they're not going to be as good as I want them to be. Kids are going to have picked up bad habits. We got to be prepared for that. We got to be prepared to not be perfect. and to just make attainable goals. And I mean, the best thing you could just do is have them watch different ensembles practice, if they can, if that's something that they can do online, like like I know that there's some like YouTube channels that have like live orchestra rehearsals, like from a while ago. They're not like live right now, but they're like a live recording of a rehearsal, just to kind of get that experience. Or to have them, one assignment would be like to listen to music, without your headphones on, but like in the room, or like outside without headphones, because that it's a way different experience, doing those different things. But yes, I definitely do worry about what they're going to sound like and how they're going to be able to listen to each other, because they've been listening to themselves a lot, which is good or bad. Or or some kids have just straight not practiced. Let's be real.
Well, it sounds to me like what you are doing for them, though, is giving them this deeper love and appreciation for music, which in the long run, when they come back, that's what will stay with them.
Yes. Yes. And that's what I'm focused on, because I've got enough cred with Instagram, with my students, like credentials with students, that I'm cool enough that
You really are.
well, thank you. They want to take my class. So they're very curious to like, what am I doing if they didn't get in my class this year? And I still message them and I'm like, well, you got to get it together, pass all your classes this year. And then guess what? You get to take that elective. You get to choose my class. And it's, showing them a different path. And I mean, this virtual thing was good for some kids and not good for others. I mean, it's like that with anything we do.
Oh, that's so true.
It is. I mean, it's a balancing act for them, a balancing act for us. And I mean, students are gonna come back and they're gonna want to please the teachers, and because they haven't been around the teachers, so you'll probably see way more breakdowns, like just classroom breakdowns of even at the elementary level and high school, where they have been at home for a long time, and then we get back to school and it doesn't sound like how it used to, and then they just get overwhelmed, and we're going to have to be dealing with a lot of this emotional stuff. I know some teachers are like, oh, social emotional learning. It's like, well, hey, guess what? That's what saved a lot of kids in the 90s, was teachers that were very in tune with those kids. And I think now we see teachers that are in tune with it and also afraid of it.
Yeah.
They're afraid because social emotional learning makes you have to be social, emotional, and vulnerable for yourself. And that's hard.
All right, so let's wrap this thing up. Can you give me like top 3 tips for teachers who are super struggling right now?
Oh, super struggling teachers. Make sure you got like a friend phone date once a week. I think that's a very stellar thing. And that may be another educator friend, so you can just talk about the positives, the negatives of the week. I also would say steer clear of different groups that you may get like lost in comparing yourself to people. Don't even go down that negative path, because every school is different. Every school has different policies. So just focus on you and your teaching and your kids. And I think the last one would be, don't lose your love of teaching and music, because there's a reason that you got into education. And to really think about that and hone that in, like every night, like before you go to bed, just be like, I became an educator because XYZ, and just kind of like that mantra of like, you are a good educator. This is a weird time. You do love music. It's just a weird time. And having yourself understand that it's okay, I think is the number one.
I hope that you will not only feel encouraged after this chat with Court, but that you've got some great ideas flowing as well. Remember that what matters most isn't your gradebook or participation points. It's that your students love music. If they love it, they'll keep coming back. So develop a culture in your classroom, even your online one, that ensures your students feel welcome, engaged, and excited to be there. It's going to be okay, and it's going to be better than okay. Thank you again to Smart Music for making this podcast happen. Thank you for joining me today. I know how incredibly valuable your time is. Remember that if you like the content we bring you every episode, to subscribe and give us an awesome rating. It really makes a difference and helps more music educators discover this podcast. It just might be what makes the difference between them leaving the profession forever or encouraging them to keep teaching on.